So, how'd you do? Did you think of some ways that you could reflect how Jesus lived? That you could answer that question, what would Jesus do? I think as we approach the first of a new year, if you're listening to this in any kind of order, watching it in the order I've done them, it's probably a pretty good goal to make it your ambition to read through the Gospels and gather as much data as you can so that you could answer that question. What would Jesus do? The question was sparked by what John wrote in 1 John chapter 2 and in verse 3. He writes, "We know that we have come to know him if we keep his commands." Well, he goes on to say that whoever says, "I know him," but does not do what he commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But if anyone obeys his words, love for God is truly made complete in him. This is how we know we are in him. And this is where we, landed and camped out for a while. Whoever claims to live in him must live as Jesus did. It's the highest, as far as I'm concerned, the highest ambition that any follower of Christ could have. And he goes on in verse 7, "Dear friends, I'm not writing you a new command, but an old one, which you have had since the beginning. This old command is the message you have heard." So I wonder what that command is. As you read on, we're going to read on, and you'll realize he doesn't quite identify the old command. Yet, he says in verse 8, "I am writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in him and in you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining." Okay, no word there about what the old command or the new command is. Let's keep going. In verse 9, "Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. Anyone who loves their brother and sister lives in the light, and there is nothing in them to make them stumble." Going on, "But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. They do not know where they are going because the darkness has blinded them." Now, remember that John writes in a lot of if-then and contrasting ideas. That I think is what he's doing here. Now, he never identifies. He never specifically says, okay, this is the old commandment. It's not new, but it's old. What would the old commandment have been? I think Jesus would have expressed, and we touched on this before, that the old command would have been, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then he said in the second command is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. I think those two summarize the old command. It's still about love. It's about loving God, and it's about loving people. But in verse 8, John says, "Yet I am writing you a new commandment," a new command. Well, I don't know that what's the new command? Well, he doesn't say, but he goes on, "Its truth is seen in him and in you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining." Now, when you go back, let's think in whole as best we can here. We go back to the idea, the principle, the whole big deal is live as Jesus did. And the one thing, we talked about this before, the one thing that most marked Jesus was his ability to love, and his command to the disciples on the night he was betrayed, and then to us by extension, is a new command. He said, "I give to you," this is in John 14, that you love one another as I have loved you. Okay. I think that is the new command that John is pointing to here, at least because he says its truth is seen in him and in you. And I think that what the truth is seen in him, in Jesus, and is seen in us to whatever degree we are able to reflect this life of Jesus, to live as he lived. I believe that's an important thing. I think that's central to what the Christian life is all about. And sometimes I think we categorize things, and when I use the term Christian life, it kind of has to do with be a good person. Our culture has kind of deconstructed the meaning of Christian, and in fact, really, when that term arose, the Christians were first, the believers were first called Christians in Antioch. Believe it or not, that was not a very complimentary term. It was actually, if you go back and look into the history of it, it was kind of a derogatory term. It wasn't like, well, that was such a Christian thing to do. We see, drop some coins in the red kettle, and what a Christian thing to do. No, there's a big difference. Andy Stanley has a wonderful teaching about this that I agree with. He said there's a huge difference between being a Christian and a follower of Jesus. That's the declension, without using those words, that John is talking about here in 1 John chapter 2. With this unnamed, unidentified, unspecified new command, he is basically saying, follow Jesus. This is about followers of Jesus. And he talks about the contrast between darkness and light. And we've said it before, we looked at it before, that the idea of darkness and light as symbols is that darkness signifies evil, light signifies righteous, bad versus good. And remember, John talks about God in chapter 1. He says, in him there is no darkness at all, meaning there's nothing bad, nothing evil, nothing tainted in God. Everything about God is pure. Now here he says, I am writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in you, him, Jesus, and you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. Here's what I get from that. I demonstrate that I am living my life as best I can as Jesus lived his. That's when I am living to whatever degree, living up to this new command. And what shows that, what demonstrates that, I'm not going to use the word proof because I don't think that's appropriate here, but it reflects the fact that I am doing what I can to the best of my ability in partnership with Christ to live as he did. I will express that as my life moves out of darkness and into his light. The Apostle Paul talks about coming out of darkness into his glorious light, his wonderful light. And then John says that the true light is already shining. Well, yeah, the example of Jesus, it's already shining. You don't have to invent that. You just have to notice it and make it your goal and intention and direct your effort, not so that God will love you, but because he deeply loves you, to live as Jesus did. Then he goes on, and now we're into, again, the contrast. in verse 9. Anyone who claims to be in the light, now remember, see now he's getting pretty deeply into this darkness and light thing. If you claim to be in the light, that would be the same as me claiming to be a follower of Jesus, claiming to live as he did. All right. If I claim that, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. Hate is a very strong word. And unfortunately, in this crazy, uncharacteristic anomaly of 2020, that hate word gets thrown around a lot on social media. And I think there are people who truly have a level of hatred. We though, I think, use the word hate in a very watered down and reduced form of what we mean. Like, I hate fish. No, I don't hate fish. I don't like to eat fish. Almost nobody gets this, but in my mouth, it tastes like what canned cat food smells like. Okay, so do I hate it? No, I don't. Hate, I dislike. There is a line, I'm convinced, it moves around and it's kind of fuzzy, but I think there's a line of distinction between dislike and hatred. Does God hate anything? Well, he says he hates dishonest scales. This is in the Old Testament. He says he hates the sin, but I struggle to remember a time or identify a time where he ever hated anyone. Although he says, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. This whole idea of hatred is, actually, we don't have time for it because it's big. But in this context, the idea, if I say I'm living in the light, but I hate a brother or a sister, that is a very significant, telling thing. Do I have to just be thrilled with everybody in my life, with every other member of God's family? They thrill me. I'm so attracted to them. No, I firmly believe that is not the case. But to hate them, here's where I think hate, the line is. The line in hate is, I wish them ill. I am not indifferent to them. I don't want good for them. I only want bad for them. Now, if I say I'm in the light and there's somebody in my life that I say I only want bad for, could that be hate? I think it could. John, strong words. If I hate a brother or a sister, I'm still in the darkness. I'm deceiving myself and I'm deceiving others. If I hate somebody in my world and say and claim to be walking in the light, I'm lying. My behaviors reflect my attitudes and beliefs, and they will always tell on me. It goes on in verse 10. Anyone who loves their brother or sister lives in the light, and there is nothing in them to make them stumble. So you've got hate contrasted with love. Hate puts you squarely in the land of darkness. Love puts you in the land of light. It's just a basic idea, but oh my goodness, is it difficult to parse this out and get it into the fabric of my life, that I truly love. I truly desire the best for the people in my life. Well, we'll build on that next time when we get together for Soul Care with Stevie Boy. I hope we get to connect this way again then.